目の前に立ちはだかる高い高い壁。その向こうはどんな眺めだろうか。どんな風に見えるのだろうか。頂の景色。俺一人では決して見ることのできない景色。でも一人ではないのなら。
Have you ever watched a sports anime where you didn't care nor knew anything about the sport, but once you started watching, you just kept coming back for more and eventually became a fan of said sport? That is my history with Haikyuu. With serialization beginning in 2012 and the anime first airing in 2014, Haikyuu has quickly become one of the most popular series in Shonen Jump, and it's not hard to see why. From the enthralling sports drama to the amazing character development, it's easy to see why it has been praised as one of the best sports series out there. So let's take a dive into why the series is truly one to love. Haikyuu is a sports series focusing on volleyball, with the name literally coming from an obscure way to say volleyball in Japanese, Haikyuu. It follows our main protagonist, Hinata, as he works his way from the amateur level volleyball, starting from middle school where he doesn't have a club until his final year of middle school, all the way to becoming a professional player in Japan's top division. During all this, he, and us as the viewers, go through all the highs and lows that one can encounter when playing a sport. His main inspiration for becoming a volleyball player is due to watching a player at nationals known simply as the Little Giant. As the name implies, the Little Giant is a small player but is regarded as the ace of his team, and Hinata looks up to that, especially as he's growing older and has only become about 160 centimeters tall. Hinata starts off very raw, with his only experience before his first match coming from training with his friends who aren't into volleyball, or training with random people in his middle school. Even during his first ever match, he plays with 5 other kids who either don't know how to play volleyball, or have very little experience but they play because they want to support Hinata. After his only middle school match, Hinata decides to attend the same high school as the Little Giant, Karasuno, and here's where we get to meet the members of the team. Almost every member of the Karasuno team gets enough time in the spotlight to show off who they are and how they've grown over the course of the entire series. And when I say almost, I literally mean there's only one character who doesn't get enough spotlight until the national tournament itself. He's so unknown to me, in fact, that I honestly don't think he had a name until it was shown to us in chapter 207. There's currently over 300 chapters, almost 400. As per usual with sports series, it's easy to hate some of the members of Karasuno early on, since they're written in such a way where you're supposed to hate them. Tsukishima. But towards the end of the series, you come to love everyone on the team, including Tsukishima. The other main protagonist of the series is also the first member we see of Karasuno, who is deemed as Hinata's rival from his only match in middle school, Tobio Kageyama, who is known in middle school as the King of the Court. Although this name does sound awesome, as Hinata is constantly telling us, the name actually brings about a negative connotation. He's called the king because he always bosses everyone around, ordering people to do this and that, and never stopping to think whether or not he should be doing something different. He thinks he's always right and he's the only one on the court. It gets so bad, in fact, that in his final middle school match, his team literally quits on him in the middle of the match, forcing him to be subbed out. This incident haunts Kageyama for a majority of the series, only really getting past it shortly before they enter the national tournament, or the Spring Inner High as it's also known by. Karasuno, at this point in time when Hinata and Kageyama join, are no longer seen as a powerhouse that they once were a few years ago when the Little Giant was there, since their iconic coach, Ikeyu Kai, left them just a few years ago, with most teams referring to them now as flightless birds or fallen champions. Because of this, many teams won't want to have practice matches with them, since the teams know they won't get much out of them, they won't get a good enough practice with them to make it worthwhile. However, this all changes when the grandson of that former coach, Keishin Yukai, along with the teacher who doesn't take no for an answer, Itetsu Takeda, come and take over the team. With the appearance of a Yukai back on Karasuno, an old rival comes calling, wanting to renew a rivalry from years ago. Now, in a sports series, every good team needs a great rival, and Haikyuu is no different. The biggest rivals for Karasuno just so happen to be the very team that gives them a new leash on life, Nekoma, alongside their legendary coach, Nekomata. Now, to understand why Nekoma is such a great rival, we need to first understand the relationship between the two coaches, Nekomata and Ikei. The two grew up alongside each other and eventually started to coach against one another. Their dream was to play against each other in an official match, but it sadly never came true since Nekomata left to go live in Tokyo, meaning they could only play each other on the national stage in the national tournament, which never happened. Their dreams, however, did live on after high school when the two became coaches. Only now it was to coach against each other in an official match, but once again, it never came true. They just could never meet in the national tournament, and, after many years, Ikei hung it up, ending the relationship between the two schools. But now, due to the appearance of Keishin, Nekomata decided now is a good time to renew the rivalry since he's getting up there in age as well and will probably retire in a few years. This lone decision really sets the stage for the members of Karasuno as they get to play against a powerhouse team, truly understanding just how much further they have to go in order to become a powerhouse once again. The main player on Nekoma, the brain of Nekoma as he is called, becomes friends with Hinata, the second-year setter Kenma Kozume, who is another rival of Hinata's, much in the same way that Kageyama is. Kenma is pretty much the exact opposite of Hinata in almost every way. He only started playing volleyball because another one of his teammates and lifelong friend, Tetsuro Kuro, used to play volleyball with him when they were kids, and they eventually joined a club together, which led them to attend the same high school, and Kenma still plays volleyball. Kenma usually likes to stay indoors and play video games, isn't interested much in exercise, and doesn't have a strong interest in volleyball, with him saying multiple times throughout the series that he only continues to play because he doesn't hate it, but he doesn't like it that much either. He's very neutral on the sport. He likes to watch it though. Though this changes once he meets Hinata, becoming extra motivated to beat him and Karasuno. We're even told that Kenma's always excited to watch Hinata play, saying Hinata is always doing something new. While Kenma indeed doesn't like the sport, he loves watching volleyball, like I said earlier, studying what players are doing. He's even shown multiple times to know exactly what the opponent is doing and how to counter it. Even though the two are rivals, they're actually great friends off the court. To further show how good of friends they are, after high school Kenma starts up his own business and becomes a sponsor for Hinata, who at the time was playing beach volleyball in Brazil to get better at volleyball himself. There's actually one more rival for Hinata I want to talk about, and it's a rival that shows up in the national tournament and challenges him for the title of the Little Giant, Korai Hoshiyumi, a second-year wing spiker for Kamo Meidai, the team that faces off and eventually defeats Karasuno in the national tournament. As you can guess, Hoshiyumi is also a smaller player, just like Hinata. But unlike Hinata, Hoshiyumi is seen as a top player in the nation, being invited to the All-Japan Youth Intensive Training Camp, same as Kageyama. Hoshiyumi actually helps Hinata become a better player indirectly, since Kageyama is also at that camp. Kageyama uses Hoshiyumi as a reference to help make Hinata grow as a better player. Hinata and Hoshiyumi meet up during nationals, and immediately it's shown that they both want to be better than each other, asking how tall they are and how high they can jump. We're also shown just how happy Hinata is to see someone his size do such amazing things, just like the Little Giant before both of them. During their match together, Hinata learns just how much farther he has to go in order to be called a Little Giant, but comes to a realization. Hinata states during the match that he no longer wants the title of Little Giant, rather accepting his role as the strongest decoy, something that Kageyama has been telling him pretty much throughout the whole series. While Hinata still strives to get better, as evidenced by him traveling to Brazil later on, he understands his role in the grand scheme of things, that he needs to do what he's strongest at rather than trying to be something he's not. On the other side of things, Kageyama's rival for the first half of the series is the setter he played behind in middle school, Toru Okaiwa. Dubbed the Grand King, he most certainly lives up to that title, being one of the best setters on the high school level. He has a very competitive personality, not only practicing hard on the court, but also studying his opponents and learning what they do and how to counteract them. These two become rivals during their time together in middle school, where Okaiwa was a third year and Kageyama was a first year. Kageyama looks up to Okaiwa, wanting to learn from him since he understands just how great Okaiwa is. and that if he surpasses Okaiwa, he himself will be the best setter in the prefecture. From Okaiwa's side though, he knows that Kageyama is better than him and will one day be passed by him, despite how talented Okaiwa is. Okaiwa has a breakdown just realizing this, nearly throwing hands with Kageyama when Kageyama simply asks him to teach him a jump serve. Their two teams, Karasuno and Obai Josai or Seijo, would meet twice in official matchups throughout the series, with each person taking a victory. Although Kageyama's victory could be seen as meaning more since that win meant they could continue on the path towards the nationals, while Okaiwa's high school career ended after that match. Both matches are really good, by the way. Both excellent, like top 5 in the entire series. Kageyama also gets a rival as they head towards the national tournament. Atsumu Miya, the star setter of Inarozaki High, the second ranked team in the tournament and one of the favorites to win it. Atsumu is first introduced in the same place as Hoshiyumi is, the All-Japan Youth Intensive Training Camp, where we see that Atsumu thinks of Kageyama as nothing more than a goody two-shoes, rather than the badass that Kageyama is portrayed as. This singular insult by Atsumu pushes Kageyama to become an even better setter, learning and understanding what each player on his team is capable of, pushing them to the brink of their athleticism. He's also no longer afraid to say something that's criticizing his teammates. For example, in a practice match, they have this beautiful rally going on. Nishinoya saves the ball and does his traditional rolling thunder, but he rolls into the way of Asahi, ready to do a back attack. Kageyama sees this and tells Nishinoya that he's in the way, because the same thing happened at the All Japan camp. This is something that Kageyama would have never done before going to that camp, though Kageyama still could learn how to make his criticism sound nicer. He kind of sounds really rough about it at first. This rivalry comes to its first boiling point during the Karasuno Inarozaki match in the second round of the Spring Inter High. Since both of them are the setters, it's really a battle of endurance. Not just who's the better setter, but also who is the better server, since both are also known as powerhouse servers. It's also a battle to see who has the better weapons and can bring the most out of said weapons. During the whole match, Atsumu, along with his twin brother Osamu, have been doing the freak quick attack that Kageyama and Hinata are famous for doing. This is important because before this match, the Miya twins have never done this attack before, meaning they literally saw these two do it and were like, yeah, we can do that. Which is just incredible and goes to show how impressive Atsumu is at being a setter, just lining up a set for the spiker to spike, just like that. It's beautiful. The big boiling point is during the final point, obviously. It's Karasuno's match point, and it's an incredible point, just like every match point in the series. But it comes down to the Miya twins doing the freak quick in the form of a back attack. Again, something that they've never done before, but it's blocked by the two people who have made this quick famous. It's very poetic and very beautiful way to end the match, since those two would know exactly how to counterattack something only they do. No one else can replicate this. Even though this match ends and you would think Kageyama has won, it's not the end, as Atsumu exclaims to Hinata that one day he will set for him, and sure enough, he does make this come true, becoming the setter for Hinata when Hinata enters the professional league, with their first match together being a match against Kageyama. I love it when a character proclaims something that could realistically become true, and it does, because Atsumu and Kageyama are really the only two setters in the series who can bring out Hinata's full potential. Okaiwa might be able to as well, but it's not really shown as much as with Kageyama and Atsumu. Furudate could have easily just had this been a throwaway line, but actually turned it into reality, and that's just beautiful. I love that. I love things like that. So good. Since the series revolves around the sport of volleyball, the mangaka Haruichi Furudate goes out of the way to explain the rules of volleyball. He talks about how the different positions on the court work both offensively and defensively, even though Furudate doesn't have to do this, instead just trusting us that we know how volleyball works. Though if that were to have happened, I don't think this series would have been as popular, because I think the draw to it is that even if you don't know anything about volleyball, you can still get into it as everything will be explained to you. To give an example of kind of what I mean, the libero, the defensive position, has to stay behind the 10-foot attack line if they want to participate in the offense, like setting. They can't spike, but they can set. They can receive anywhere as well, but to participate in the offense, they have to stay behind the 10-foot line, which limits how much they can do, but they can still do things like being the setter, or they can do basic receives, as we see many times throughout the series. We're also told about different schemes that the offense might use, like time delay attacks or synchronized attacks, setter dumps, and much more. While on the defensive side, they might use things like bunch shift, spread shifts, or staying further away from the net in case of a hard spiker like Ushijima. Furudate even delves into the minds of volleyball players as they are playing, seeing what they are thinking whilst the game's happening, showing us how much and how quickly players can pick up on the little information that they've been shown. I really enjoy things like this. I really enjoy mind games like this, seeing what they're thinking and how can they figure this out. So this is easily one of my favorite parts of the series. We're also shown just how much this can play into the outcome of a match, with the highlight of this, in my opinion, coming from the Nekoma Sarukawa match that happens in the national tournament, which I'll talk about later on. So far I've talked about things that can be applied to both the manga and the anime, but now I want to dive into just what makes the anime stand out from the manga, and why I believe you should watch the anime as well, not just read the manga. First thing is the sound production in general. The entire OST, which is what you've been hearing in this video so far, is composed by Yuki Hayashi, who has also composed the music for My Hero Academia and Ballroom e Yokoso. His style of music complements the scenes perfectly, which, whether it be trying to hype us up for the upcoming part of the match, a nice somber feel for the relaxing parts of the show, or a combination of the two scenarios. While both styles of music are totally different from one another, neither style feels out of place, as if that piece of music was meant to go along with that scene for all of eternity. Along with the music, the sound effects are just as amazing. They blend in so beautifully that sometimes it feels like I'm just watching a game of volleyball, then all of a sudden, the sound of a cannon goes off and I'm immediately reminded that this is indeed an anime. The second thing that makes the anime worth watching is the animation itself, obviously. Made by Production IG, who have made Kuroko no Basuke, Psycho-Pass, and Attack on Titan. The animation is very slick and very nice to look at most of the time. But most importantly, it conveys what's happening perfectly. In the manga, it can sometimes be hard to follow where the players are, with the pictures having to be read left to right, rather than the more natural way of right to left. Other times, it can take myself a bit of time to figure out exactly what's happening during a rally, causing me to be confused for a few seconds, or having to read ahead to figure out what has happened. The best thing to come from the animation though, is that Production IG actually adds on to scenes in order to flesh them out, making them extremely good, with the best example being the final point against Shiratorizawa. The exact moment during the final point that gets this treatment is right when Hinata is about to spike the ball for the final time, scoring the match-winning point and sending Karasuno to the national tournament. In the manga, there's just a singular panel of Kageyama setting the ball to Hinata in order for him to do the back attack, and then 3 panels later, he spikes it to win. Still a very hyped scene given the context of the situation, but it comes nowhere close to what the anime does. The anime goes all out, turning that singular panel into this. This scene is easily my favorite in the entire show, and it's easy to understand why. The shot goes from the ball being set by Kageyama to the slow panic shot of everyone jumping one by one acting as decoys, finally ending up at the back of Hinata and doing another circle closing in on his face. Seeing the concentration on his face, not wanting to miss the spike. The analogy of all the crows going to attack the one white eagle representing Ushijima, it's so beautiful. It works on every level and it just is amazing. Production IG didn't have to go out of their way to do this, instead just giving us what the manga gave us with maybe a bit more to spice it up. But no, they knew how important this moment was, and they made us care about it just that much more. I love them for that. If I sat here and tried to talk about every single member of Kurasuno and how awesome they are and how great they evolve over the course of the series, we would be here all day. From Asahi trying to live up to the role of ace, Yamaguchi embracing his role as a pinch server, or even Suga dealing with and accepting the fact that he's a third year who is a backup to a first year. While I could go into depth on all of these, I want to talk about the person who has changed the most in the series in my opinion, Kei Tsukishima. Tsukishima, or just Suki, was first introduced in Chapter 5 and is immediately shown to be a jerk, especially towards Kageyama, angering him by bringing up the stuff about how Kageyama got left behind in middle school. Suki seems to enjoy being the kind of smart-ass guy, and I would know since I'm that same kind of person. Suki isn't an ultra-competitive guy, rather just relying on his natural height to lead him to where he is at the start of the series. He is also constantly asking why everyone is trying so hard at volleyball when this is just a club and clubs should just be a pastime. We come to find out that he sees volleyball this way due to his relationship with his brother and their shared love of the sport of volleyball. His brother, Akitaru, is also very passionate about the sport of volleyball, always talking to Suki about it and helping him train when Suki was still a small child. Akitaru was known as the ace of his middle school club and has the goal of making nationals like most players do. However, this all changes once Akitaru enters high school at Kurasuno around the same time the Little Giant played there. Akitaru becomes frustrated and is pained by the fact that no matter how hard he tries, he just can't become a regular member of the team, much less the ace. Suki doesn't know any of this though, as he's just being fed lies by his brother since Akitaru doesn't want to disappoint him. But Suki does find out in probably the most heartbreaking fashion imaginable, by going to what is supposed to be his brother's last game and sees his brother in the stands. Any words I say can't do this panel justice. Due to all this, Suki doesn't want to become too passionate because he's scared he'll end up like his brother. This all changes though during their trip to the Tokyo training camp in the summer. During this camp they are practicing alongside powerhouse teams Nekoma, their biggest rival, and Fukurodani, who has a top 3 spiker in the nation, Kotaru Bokuto. After practicing for the day, most players stay behind to get an extra practice, all except Suki, which makes sense based on his relationship with the sport as we just mentioned. Finally, Yamaguchi, friends with Suki since grade school, calls him out on this, saying that he has the potential to be better than Hinata, he has the smarts to do it, but by not doing it, he's acting really pathetic, which is something Suki mocks everyone for, including his older brother earlier. Despite this, Suki still tries to play it down, asking why he should be motivated to become better than anyone else, to which Yamaguchi replies, This finally sets Suki on the right path, but it isn't quite enough yet. He goes to ask Bokuto why he enjoys playing volleyball, despite knowing that this may lead nowhere in his future. Bokuto explains that he just recently started to enjoy volleyball due to experiencing that moment. The moment where you feel better than everyone and no one can stop you even on their best day. If Suki were to hit this moment, he'll get hooked onto volleyball. Sure enough, this sets Suki on that path to becoming the great player he is, and he does finally experience that moment, which is easily one of the best moments in the series.
もしもその瞬間が来たら、それがお前がバレエにハマる瞬間だ。
I mentioned earlier that the Nekoma Sarukawa match was a perfect showcase of the mind games that go on during a volleyball match, and now I want to expand on that and explain why I think this match in such a way. Now this match doesn't last very long, it only lasts 5 chapters from 265 to 269, but it conveys so much in the little amount of time it has. We arrive in the middle of the first set with Nekoma ahead. From observations from the crowd, we're told that Sarukawa isn't trying as hard as they could. They aren't trying to score points, rather their intention is to make Kenma run around and around, tiring him out, thus shutting down the brain, making Nekoma fall apart. This could work since Nekoma is a defensive-oriented team, meaning they'll return anything thrown at them, and the mastermind behind Sarukawa's plan, Shishiho Aritaka, actually played for Nekomata, so this plan makes even more sense coming from a former student. This plan, however, isn't going to work, since Nekoma knows exactly what is happening and states that they will adapt to any strategy and flow with it, implying they've gone through something like this before in the past. Now in the second set, Kenma trips and falls over due to running around so much, which, in a way, plays into their next match with Karasuno. We're also told that Sarukawa is in this game for the long haul, rather they want to do 100 plays and tire out the opponent rather than do flashy, fast plays which would only tire them out, basically being the exact opposite of Karasuno. Now finally, we can get into the beautiful mind games that have been going on for the entire second set. Kenma has deliberately asked his team to receive the ball to him off target, meaning away from the spiker he intends to use. That way he can bait the blockers into thinking the ball will go near the spiker, leaving the one he wants to use wide open. Sarukawa catches on though, so Kenma just uses the nearby spiker anyway. To go even further into this, Nekomata puts the backup setter on the bench, making Sarukawa relax since they think Nekoma was doing a setter switch. Everything about this is beautiful, and it was shown in the panels the entire time. So if you were clever enough, you could have maybe caught on to what was going on even though nothing was told to us. It flows seamlessly into the story, it makes perfect sense, it's just beautiful. This also shows how smart Kenma is, like I was saying earlier. It's just so good, I love it. We're actually going to follow straight from the end of that match to the ending of the next match, which is Nekoma Karasuno. Because how this match ends is unique, and I have to mention the match they've been building up to since chapter 24. That would just be wrong if I don't. So it's at Karasuno match point, and we're in the middle of a rally. Kenma's finally showing his competitive side, yelling at one of his teammates to continue going for the ball since it hasn't dropped yet, which is a theme throughout the entire series. The ball hasn't dropped, so keep going for it. This rally just keeps going on and on. You see a bunch of spikes, a bunch of diving receives, a bunch of blocks, emotions from the audience. Everyone is literally going all out as it should be. This match has been built up the entire series. There are two beautiful panels shown to us back to back of the action in the current match and of a practice match between the two teams, conveying the message that all the nerves are gone from the players. To these two teams, this is more or less just a practice match at this point, and you can tell this is how they feel by their attitudes after the final point. So Nekoma blocks Ryu's top caliber line shot, and it's up in the air to Kenma. Kenma has two people he can set to, and just as he's about to set it, the unthinkable happens. The ball slips from his hand, dropping to the floor, ending the match. I honestly can't tell you how long I just sat there staring at the ball slipping away from Kenma. I was heartbroken, guys. It was insane. I didn't think I would ever continue reading on. It's such a tragic ending to the match, and I know some people feel this as a cheap finish, but it honestly makes sense to me. Kenma went all out in this match, more than any match in his career, so his hands would be sweatier than usual, you know. That rally was also really long, being touched by 18 different people before finally falling, making it one of, if not the longest rally in the entire series. So it just makes perfect sense to me that it would end like this. I mean, did you want it to end with another like Hinata Kageyama fast set? Did you want to end with a block? No, you can't end this match with something like that. It's got to be unique. It's got to stand out from the crowd, and it certainly does here. The next thing we see happen actually plays into the next match. Hinata asks Tanaka to have a nice serve, not yet realizing that the match had ended, looking very exhausted, more than he usually is. You can say he used up a lot of energy, and he did, but the reason he's so weak, I'll explain that in the next match, because it plays into that match. This rivalry with Nekoma comes to a perfect end, with everyone just happy that they gotta play each other. No one's upset by the result, just looking relaxed that it finally happened and everyone can move on to the next thing. Moving straight to the end of the next match, I know I keep talking about the endings of these matches, but so much happens in these matches, I would legit be here for hours talking about it. So I just want to describe the most impactful parts to me, which is usually the endings of the match. So the next match is the one against Kamomedai, led by Hoshiumi, the new little giant. I do want to mention this real quick though, but in the audience for this match is none other than the original little giant. We and Hinata finally get to meet this man, the man that set this whole series off, and it's beautiful, it's amazing, and his entrance into this story flows so naturally. He just wants to watch his old school play, so simple, yet so effective. He just wants to watch some good ass volleyball. Score is currently tied 13-all in the final set, and we've got a nice little rally going on like we always do. Kageyama tries to do a setter dump. It fails, but it gets saved by Daichi's foot since he was running in for an attack as well, because that's usually what Karasuno does. Everyone goes for the attack. It goes over. It gets sent back over. We get a one touch by Suki. That gets saved by Hinata. Perfect set to Tsukishima by Kageyama, but it gets saved by Hoshiumi, because of course it gets saved. That's not dramatic enough yet. Kamomedai gets a nice high spike, but it's saved once again by Hinata. Now, receiving the ball usually means that you aren't getting the spike, but this is Hinata who's really quick, so he's getting the spike. Him and Kageyama do their trademark freak quick back attack, and it works, giving the lead to Karasuno. As Hinata and Ryu are about to celebrate, Hinata falls to the floor, and we're not sure what's wrong with him at first. Kageyama comes over and states that Hinata more than likely has a fever, as his hands were abnormally hot earlier when they were celebrating together. Now we see in flashbacks hinting at something not being quite right with Hinata, but it's also shown that everyone, including us as the readers, at least me, just wrote it off as him being too excited for this tournament. I love it when authors throw in subtle hints like that, because this all was shown to us, much like in that Nekoma Sarukawa match. This was all shown to us, and if we were smart, or if we could have maybe picked up on it. Due to this, Hinata can't play in this match anymore, and is of course really upset by this. Takeda gives probably the best speech in the entire series, saying that Hinata needs to remember this feeling, because this feeling will happen again. The feeling of not being able to do anything. His size forces him to get few chances, and he needs to think about how to win, not just recklessly going after things. Hinata also needs to learn to take care of his health, since that is also important to playing the sport of volleyball, needing to be in peak condition in order to play at his best, taking advantage of the opportunities he is allowed to have. Very beautiful, easily encapsulating everything that Hinata has been told over the course of the series. But right now, it's what he needs to hear, and coming from one of his coaches makes it much more impactful to me. Haikyuu doesn't really have a lot of motivational speeches, but by God, this has got to be one of the best, along with Yukai's doing volleyball is a sport where you don't look down. That is beautiful. As Hinata is about to leave the court, Kageyama calls back to the time they met after the middle school match, where Hinata claimed that he would be the one to stand on the court longer. Kageyama simply says, "I win this time too." The rivalry is still strong between the two, but also firing up Hinata even more. We end with the doors coldly closing on Hinata, him never returning to the court in his first year. This leads to Karasuno losing the match, the third years graduating and leaving the club, and to the shock of every reader, we jump ahead 5 years and Hinata's in Rio de Janeiro. Most people I see talking about Haikyuu only talk about the anime, and I understand that since most probably only watch the anime, but I want to talk about things that aren't in the anime. So I want to go in depth on the time skip, the final arc as it's called. And the first shot we're shown of it in chapter 370, it's the color page calling it the final arc. It just hits me so hard. It's hard to describe how I feel, but I kind of just feel this like satisfaction that we're coming to the end, I guess. It's like I'm not ready to say goodbye, but I'm also excited to see how everyone's grown in 5 years' time. We learned that they made the spring tournament in the last 2 years of their high school careers, but lost in the third round to Inarizaki and the Mia twins in their second year, and then placed third in their final year, finally getting to play on center court, which is what Hinata always wanted to do. Kageyama during this time has become one of the best players in Japan and got to play in the 2016 Olympics for Team Japan, while Hinata just watches from his bike in Brazil. Hinata is in Brazil to become an even better volleyball player by playing beach volleyball, something he's been interested in since the first year training camp where he saw the 2-on-2s. The only person that can help him in beach volleyball is someone who graduated from Shira Torizawa, but they're currently in Brazil, hence why he's in Brazil. Hinata says that he's more than willing to go to Brazil, but is told to take 1 year after graduating to prepare, and that he has 2 years to practice before coming back to Japan. There's this lovely little scene of our two boys playing volleyball together for what is probably the last time in the series, and they each say their goodbyes as Hinata is now off to Brazil while Kageyama stays in Japan to play professionally. Hinata has kind of become a legend in the local beach volleyball scene in his 2 years there, gaining the nickname Ninja Shoyo. We learn a little bit about how pairings work with others, how they can just come and go very casually, so sponsors only go for individuals rather than pairs. We now take a flashback to see how Hinata first arrived in Brazil, how he got a part-time job as a delivery boy, and that his roommate is the exact opposite of him, not very outgoing. We see Hinata struggling to adapt not only to the sand, but also to kind of life in Brazil. He's struggling with the fact that he's basically all alone in Brazil. He has no friends as everyone else is back in Japan. And we get this really sad panel of him just kind of in the corner looking so sad. However, this all changes when he randomly gets to join a beach match. And he's doing okay, he's still learning, like he's only been here maybe a month or so, we're not really sure. As he's playing, he recognizes that someone is speaking Japanese. Since it's Brazil, everyone here more than likely speaks Portuguese. It turns out this man is none other than the Grand King himself, Okaiwa. We see that Kageyama and Ushijima are now teammates in Japan Professional League, both learning that Okaiwa and Hinata have met up in Brazil. Okaiwa plays professionally as well, being a setter in the Argentine League, and he chose to play in Argentina due to one of his childhood heroes, Jose Blanco, being from Argentina. As a child, he became amazed by this dude because Jose Blanco just came in off the bench, super cold, and he helped the ace of the team recover from a slump that he was having. Okaiwa states that Blanco was the star of this match, not the ace, because this man literally just lifted the team up from the ruins. Okaiwa frequently went to Blanco as well whenever he was unsure about continuing playing volleyball, since Blanco coached in the Japanese V-League, the top professional league in Japan. There's this inspirational speech that Blanco gives Okaiwa that we've actually heard back during the second match between Seijo and Karasuno. That speech before the final point. He tells him that there will always be someone who is better than him, no matter how much he pushes himself, and it's up to him to decide whether or not it's worth continuing down this path, though continuing down that path might truly be even more awful than just giving up. Okaiwa and Hinata now team up for a beach match, since Hinata really wants to play alongside Okaiwa, wanting to learn from him while also train more on the beach. Honestly, even though this match is super short, it's impressive due to the fact that this is an entirely new sport being thrown at us, but Furudate eases us into it, teaching us about the differences between indoor and outdoor. You have to be aware of how the wind's blowing, the odd overhand setting rules, and making sure not to double contact the ball. Hinata remarks that Okaiwa was picking up the game fairly well despite just starting, showing us just how good Okaiwa is at volleyball, whether it be indoor or beach. They end up losing the match, but it's not too big of a deal since it was just a rando match and they're still new to beach. Hinata expresses wanting to play more with Okaiwa, and Okaiwa says he'll be in Rio de Janeiro for the entire week, but kind of acts like he doesn't want to play with Hinata, but I think that's just his ego getting in the way based on kind of how he says it. They talk about how Hinata, despite having all this knowledge of indoor and having a very high level, doesn't mind being back at level 1, since Hinata enjoys the level up process. Now we get probably my favorite panel in the entire series. As Hinata's trying to, get his roommate to be more outgoing, he comes over to the table and he whips out copy of volume 1 of One Piece. So in this universe, Shonen Jump exists and they read it, despite the fact that they themselves are also in Shonen Jump. So I wonder, is Haikyuu in this? Like, is Haikyuu just a different story in this world? I'm so intrigued, because they also have Dragon Ball. So, who knows, man? I want to see Haikyuu inside Haikyuu. There's a rematch between the two teams from the earlier match, and we're seeing just how amazing Okaiwa is at this sport. Despite this being only his second beach match, I presume, he still can take into account Hinata jumping in the sand, how high his jump will be, and where the wind is blowing the ball. This man is just amazing, and honestly, I want to see Kageyama in the beach setting, just to see how amazing he would be at it. Okai was always thinking about what to do next, not caring who he's playing with or where he's playing. Okaiwa also expresses that beach volleyball is like going back to the basics of the sport, since there's only 2 people on each side, and says that the sport's very fun, something he's been struggling with for some time now it seems. The two continue playing and they're gelling really well since Okaiwa is just like that, exclaiming that beach is fun since you get to touch the ball a lot more. They end up winning this time around, and Okaiwa is now heading back to Argentina, saying he feels recharged thanks to the beach environment and proclaims that he's now going to beat everyone, including Hinata of course. We're now back in the present time, 2 years later. It's shown to us that Hinata and his new partner Heitor Santana mesh really well together, ending up in the finals of a tournament, and if they win this one they end up on another circuit where even harder foes await them. We discover just how much Hinata dedicates his life to the sport he loves, whether it's eating very healthy, getting proper sleep, or just doing light training when he's not playing volleyball. His life just revolves around this sport, and I assume that's kind of how it's like with other professional caliber players, whether it's esports or normal ass sports like football or soccer or basketball. We're shown the final few points of their tournament final match, but I won't go over it since I don't think we're supposed to care about the result of the match itself, but rather about Hinata's growth as a player and as a character from his time in Brazil. They end up losing the match by 2 points, and Hinata enjoys his final few months in Rio before heading back to Japan. He admits when leaving that he didn't master beach at all. He only had 2 years, so how is he going to master? But he's ready to try out for a professional team once he gets back to Japan. Hinata's now going to try out for the MSBY Black Jackals, who are based on a real team in Japan, the Panasonic Panthers, so that's pretty neat. Go Panthers! The Black Jackals also have Atsumu Miya and Bokuto on their team, so shit's about to happen, and it's gonna happen fast. This is gonna be a lot of fun. Hinata of course makes the team, as I said earlier, because him and Atsumu team up, and his first professional indoor match is gonna be against Kageyama and the Shuaiden Alders, which is also based on a team called the Oita Miyoshi Weisai Alders. This has nothing to do with the arc, but I find it neat that the 2 teams Ushijima is on in this series, Shiratorizawa and the Alders, both mean white eagles. Hinata strolls to the bathroom as he usually does before big games, and runs into Kageyama, seeing each other for the first time in 3 years. Kageyama makes reference to the fact that Hinata has always had stomach issues before big games due to nerves, but Hinata is fully prepared today. Hoshiyumi, now dubbed the Little Giant, also plays for the Alders, meaning the 2 people who wanted to be the Little Giant get to face off once again. This is gonna be fun. This to me is where the arc really gets good, because we're back into the actual series in a way. Brazil felt kind of like a spin-off series, and even though I did enjoy it, I could tell we weren't supposed to care about a lot of that, but this stuff right here from chapter 378 onwards, I should start caring again, because we're back into what's actually supposed to be happening. Every important person from the series is shown here, and is also shown what they've been up to in the past 5 years. Yamaguchi's working for an electronics company, Osamu Miya has stopped playing volleyball entirely and started up his own onigiri shop, Daichi's now a cop, Asahi's a designer of apparel, and Suga's an elementary teacher. We also see Suki has now gone professional, playing for the Sendai Frogs, while also working for the Sendai City Museum next year. I think the big one to me though is that Ryu and the former manager of Karasuno, Kyoko, the girl Ryu was crazy about in high school, have now gotten married, and that's just amazing. Keishin and Takeda also show up to watch the 2 boys play, while also bringing their current Karasuno team, which is adorable, but also smart as the new Karasuno can learn by watching the professional teams. There's this scene that's really nice of all the guys just meeting up in the hallway before the match, just reintroducing themselves while also showing just how stacked these 2 teams are. It's shown that the Jackals also have Kiyomi Sakusa, who was, alongside Bokuto, a top player during his days back in high school, and his team was the favorite to win the spring tournament in his second year, which is the tournament we saw where Karasuno lost to Kalmo Meidai. It's time for the player introductions for the match, and everyone goes crazy when Hinata arrives since no one's seen him in years, with Tanaka literally crying when he sees him on the court. There's 3 wonderful panels here of Kageyama and Hinata across the net in middle school, the final time they saw each other at graduation, and now them shaking hands as opponents once again with the match now beginning. The match starts with Kageyama doing his traditional big serve, proclaiming he isn't the same person he was in high school. This serve looks to be aimed directly at Hinata to see how good he truly is after going to Brazil. Hinata, like the boss he is now, gets it no problem and is immediately back on his feet in order to spike it. Atsumu gives him a nice, beautiful serve, and Hinata now shows us the true power of his jumps, going high above the net, even getting Hoshiyumi to praise him on the jump. With a beautiful cross-court shot and excitement in the air, Hinata proclaims that he is, once and for all, here, with everyone welcoming him home. I could read this particular part all day, it's just that nice. It's beautiful. Next to serve is Atsumu, who tries to act all cool and cocky by shutting the entire crowd up before doing his serve so he can concentrate, but he ends up serving it out of bounds. I find that a little funny. The original Little Giant has also shown up to watch Hinata, and I presume Hoshiyumi, since both were chasing after his title. Man just wants to watch some good volleyball. We're introduced to a new character, Nicolas Romero, a Brazilian player who just joined the Japanese league this year. He's up to serve and hits a booming shot that goes by everyone, and they all just kind of mark out a little bit because he's kind of a veteran, so they've all seen him before on television. That's pretty cute. I like that. Sakusa is able to receive the next one, and now it's time for the famous freak quick, but this time it's with Atsumu instead of Kageyama. They do it perfectly, even faster than before, but Kageyama, who played with Hinata all those years, knows what's coming and is able to receive it, but the receive goes out of bounds, giving the point to Hinata and Atsumu. We get a stare down between the two setters as they both know there's going to be one hell of a match. After a few more points, it's now Hinata's time to serve, and to the shock of everyone, our boy's finally doing a jump serve, something that I've been wishing he'd done since high school. Many people were also very disappointed in his serves, saying it was too normal for someone of his skill set. It lands out of bounds though, giving the point to the Alders, with some nice little banter between the Jackals and insults from Kageyama. Hoshiyumi's up to serve, and it's easily received by Bokuto, with Sakusa in for the spike. Saved by the libero just barely, and it looks like it's gonna have to be weakly passed over because you're only allowed 3 hits. However, Romero does a beautiful spike, with his back to the net, does a 180-degree turn and slams it to the ground, much in the same way Asahi tried to do in the second match against Seijo. Hoshiyumi serves again, but this time, the Black Jackals have a hard time getting it over. Hinata tries to send it in a place where Nicolas Romero's not going to be able to, receive and spike, but it doesn't work. Romero easily receives it, and receives it in such a way that his momentum takes him into the spike, and everyone just flips the hell out because this man's just that amazing. He's the veteran that needed to be introduced, since everyone here we already know. We need to put in some fresh blood, we need to spice it up a little bit with a living legend. Someone that is a fan favorite, not just with the fans, but also with the players as well. With the players being pumped up to either play with him or play against him. And that's where the manga is currently at time of recording, chapter 383. I honestly can't wait to see where this arc goes, with many people hoping that Hinata makes the national team and wins a gold medal during the 2020 Olympics, which are being held in Tokyo. Well, that sounds nice. I don't really want to see that. I kind of just want to see it end with this match, with Hinata winning and beating Kageyama, being the one to last on the court the longest. Who knows where it's gonna go, but I'm here for the ride, man. That's all I have to say on the Haikyuu series as of now. It's nearing the end of its run, which makes me sad, since I've really enjoyed every moment of the series thus far. It's rare that I watch a series when they're airing and get to experience the ending in real time with other fans. So seeing this come to an end soon is hard to accept, but I'm still going to enjoy it. If anything I've said during this video has piqued your interest, I 100% recommend picking up this series. This series is something that you won't regret picking up, even if you don't like volleyball or if you don't like sports in general. The story and the characters are the things that will keep you coming back. I guarantee it. But until then, take care.
Bale は常に上を向くスポーツだ